Hello everybody, I am Levi, and welcome to Gaming Pickups Part 4, which somehow we've already gotten to Part 4. Most of the context for this series I have gone over in previous installments, so if you're new to this, check out the first few minutes of any of my older videos in this series. If you're familiar with this, let's get going. First thing I want to note, this video is probably much longer than other ones. Because when I came out with the first episode, I went over 36 games. First episode, I went over 34 games. Second episode, went over 30 games. Third episode, went over 31 games. Today I have 64 games. I really considered splitting this into two parts, but I asked the Discord community, and it seems like overwhelming majority is keep it as one segment. So we're gonna go through a lot in this video. And there is some stuff in here that I'm very excited for. Previous videos, my highlight reel for the end has been 2-3 games. Today it's like 8 or 9. So there's a lot to go through today, and I'm very excited to get into it. So, let's start today with PlayStation 1, because there's so many PlayStation 1 games to go through today. So, I saw an option or something show up on the Facebook Marketplace recently, and there was just a large bundle of PS1 related things that was super cheap, and I picked that up. So I got quite a few games I don't actually know that much about. So a few of them didn't have boxes. The first one was Missile Command, which I don't know a whole lot about this. But it sounded interesting, and I'm guessing it has something to do with, like, nuclear strikes, or something to do with, like, military operations. Another one I got that I know next to nothing about is Spec Ops Stealth Patrol. Now, I know a little bit about Spec Ops The Line, and I'm not actually sure if this is necessarily part of that same franchise, but that was like a third-person shooter with a focus on plot, and I'm not sure what the franchise will be doing at this time, or even if it is the same franchise, so no idea what I'm getting into there. This one is Battle Tanks Global Assault. I have no idea what this is, probably something to do with tanks fighting tanks, and it just has like some of the most generic artwork I can think of on here. It just looks so like cropped out, and also why is there like a 3DO logo on there? I don't know why 3DO is being promoted on a PS1 game. I got Gran Turismo 2 as a part of that bundle, which I already had Gran Turismo 3 from a previous video, which I was quite interested in trying that out. I don't know what I'm getting into with the PS2 installment in the franchise, but I'd be interested to see what it's got at that era, because PS1, there was a lot of attempts at racing games that were either good or bad. Speaking of racing games on the PS1, there's more than just that. There's Jet Moto. Oh, quite reflective. No idea what Jet Moto is. But I have it now, so I'll try it out. I know it's a racing game, I believe. I don't really know what I'm getting into with that. The other one was Test Drive Off-Road, which looks like it had a lot of pickup trucks and monster trucks in it. So I'm really unsure if that's going to be a good or a bad game. And sort of the last one I have without a case is Ready to Rumble Boxing, with 2 actually being the number 2. And this game, I don't really know, but if you know, the N64 was really well known for having a lot of really good wrestling games. It looks like this was kind of the PlayStation's way of counteracting that, is they had a really good boxing game, which was this, and it was very well reviewed, and I don't really own any boxing games, so I think I'll give it a try. And in addition to those PS1 games that were in the bundle, there was 4 more of them that were like Fox or EA Sports or something, and I just sold them all for like $1, to the local game store. I have a picture of them somewhere I'll put on screen, but like I didn't even care to keep them. There's just like no point to it. I was never going to play these games, but technically I had them for a week. Just not in time for the video. And a few of the other ones, there was 4 more games from that bundle that I got that had cases. And one of those was Stage Roll Cage 2, or Roll Cage Stage 2, not sure. But this is a game that I feel like I've heard about briefly. I believe it's like those old like cars, or remote control cars that you could get as a kid or something, that would like, they just like flip all over the place, and no matter what way they landed, it was right side up. I believe they kind of tried to design a game around that, so kind of whatever crazy level they gave at you, it wasn't limited to being like right side up all the time. And it looks like there's a lot of different terrains and power-up type stuff. Like, just looking at the back of the box, there's stuff that looks like a standard race. There's explosions. There's lots of item usage. There's lightning powers. There's a stage that looks like something out of Super Monkey Ball. And I am quite curious to see what that game has. Another one from that bundle was Street Skater. And yeah, I think it's a Tony Hawk ripoff. I mean, I'd like to say I know it's a Tony Hawk ripoff, but I just haven't gotten quite that much progress, meaning no progress in it to say that for certain, but pretty sure it's a Tony Hawk ripoff. Then there was Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22. Which, I know that other Dragon Ball Z games since then were well reviewed, but people I've talked to hate this game. I don't know if anyone I've talked to actually played this, but apparently it's not that great. But, I don't care. Really. I mean, I'll still try it. If I don't like it, I can move on to the next thing. Lastly from that bundle was The Emperor's New Groove, which is a 3D platformer, from what I can tell, and I really don't know what I'm getting into with that. It looks and sounds interesting. I know almost nothing about the source material, but I enjoy 3D platformers quite a bit, and I will try it out. Additionally, for PS1, I picked up A Bug's Life, which one of my favorite YouTube channels ever is Cat Icarus, or The Cat Icarus Show. He goes by Catty, or whatever he decides to call it, because he splits it up between a few different names. But this is a game that not a lot of people pay attention to. It is a very solid 3D platformer, as far as he's led me to believe, and it's a really cheap game to pick up now, so I decided I'd try that. And just as a side note, I'll just skip to N64 right now. I got Toy Story 2 without the label, but someone had Sharpied on Toy Story and I added in the 2. Exact same backstory as this. An under-the-radar 3D platformer that is really, really good. And both recommendations from him, although on his channel he did the PS1 version. Same game, though. This one I actually got for free because it had no label, and people just weren't interested in it for that reason alone. So I just got it for free because of the condition of the cartridge, and I tested it and it still works fine, so good enough for me. Then I got Tekken 3, which me and Chris have previously played Tekken 2 on the channel, and we really enjoyed that, even though it wasn't really that refined. And as far as fans of Tekken have told me, Tekken 3 is where the series really got its start. So this is actually like really legitimate fighting game that does a really good job of introducing new players while still having really refined mechanics. And this is kind of from the era where fighting games were very willing to do some very unusual things to make their games stand out. So I'm very interested in getting into Tekken 3. There's also one of the games that they've announced for the PlayStation Classic Mini. I bought this prior to that being announced, so I didn't buy it because of that, so now it's kind of made me less interested in the PlayStation Classic Mini because of it, and that's kind of upsetting, but I don't know. We'll still try it out. Probably sometime before that, if we can, give people a taste of what they're getting into if they're looking for the PlayStation Classic Mini. I got Pac-Man World 1, which, if you've been keeping up with the series, Van has really, really highly recommended Pac-Man World 2 to me, so I picked that up. I found Pac-Man World 3 at one point, picked that up as well, and then I started looking into it, and I was like, well, where's Pac-Man World? Is that on the original Xbox as well? What console is that for? It's a PlayStation 1 exclusive? I guess. So, I was just kind of going all over the place, and I managed to track down a copy for fairly cheap, and now whenever I get around to the Pac-Man World series, I can make sure I'm starting at the very beginning, and I'm very excited to try this one out, because it looks like a really cool take on a platformer. It looks... how do I describe this? It looks the most similar to Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, to... like, I've never seen any game that looked more similar to Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards than what the back of the box implies for this game. And so that really excites me. And then, sort of, lastly, for the PlayStation 1, is Time Commando. This is a game I found for, like, $1.50, and I have never heard of it, and I've never researched it, and I don't really want to. I just want to go in blind. And this is one game that I've been talking to my friends about, like, people who collaborate on the channel, like, what games do you want to play with me? What games do you want to stream or whatever? No game I've ever picked up has drawn more attention from the community on the channel than this game. Because the premise on the back of the box is just... it's just incredibly interesting. It could be an awful game, but what they try to do and what they try to promote it as just sounds quite interesting. So I'll just read it. Time is your weapon, history is your battlefield. A deadly virus has invaded the military's top-secret supercomputer. Its catastrophic time-warping effects threaten to overtake the world. Battle through history to stop this technological demon. Defeat the virus and vicious warriors from the past and future. Instinct will be your ally. All-out combat only your choice. So basically, a supercomputer with access to a time machine gets a virus, and you have to find a way to stop it. And the way you do that is whatever time frame you get stuck in. I think it's kind of like Mega Man style, where you just kind of have like the 9 worlds, even though, well, that's what this has. Mega Man doesn't have 9 usually, but they let you do that, and so you just kind of have like the levels with the bosses at the end, from what I've seen, and you have to like match up power-ups, and it's very much like a Mega Man type game with that premise, although every level is a different part of history. So there's like prehistoric, Roman, feudal Japan, medieval, conquistador, western, modern wars, the future, and the virus. And the virus just looks like a digital representation of reality, not even sci-fi at that point. And so, like, just the concept of this game has just been so interesting to everyone I've talked to about it. And so, I don't know who we're getting together for that, but it's just a game that's captured so many people's interests. On to PS2. Another console I got quite a few things for. So, I picked up Rogue Galaxy. I don't know really much of anything, except there was one guy I was hanging out with a bit at Con Bravo. I don't remember his name. He was with me, Rabbid Luigi, and Ben. We were like a group of 4 there at Con Bravo, and this was a game that he picked up, and like he talked to me a little bit about it, and it just sounded super interesting, and I managed to find a copy of it, which I don't normally spend as much as I did on this for a game I know nothing about, but it just sounds like Treasure Planet, but it's an RPG. And I know that there's already Skies of Arcadia, but this is like a much more serious tone, I suppose you could say. And it just sounds very interesting. It doesn't have the highest reviews ever, so I was unsure if it was really that good, but now that I've actually obtained it and talked to people about it, it's a game that's like, I guess, just a gem that just people don't know about, that's apparently a really good game. And so I'm very interested for whenever I get a chance to get into that. Additionally, I got Siphon Filter the Omega Strain. This is one of the only Siphon Filter games I have yet to obtain. I think I own just about the entire franchise now, like all 5 or 6 of them or something. And that's just because All Time Gaming keeps recommending them to me, and I keep finding them for like $1 or $2 each. And I'm just very interested in getting into them, because the premise behind them sounds interesting, kind of like Splinter Cell or Metal Gear Solid type gameplay, but with a bit more of a focus on action. So kind of like in Splinter Cell Blacklist, kind of like the Panther path. It's kind of like an entire series based around that, if that makes sense. I don't know, obscure reference probably. I picked up Ace Combat 4, which is the fourth game I'm getting in the franchise, actually, but also the earliest game I'm getting in the franchise, because I originally tried out Ace Combat Assault Horizon Legacy on the 3DS, really like that, beat it like 3 times back to back, and so I picked up Ace Combat 10 on the PSP, and Ace Combat 5 for PS2, and I've been playing Ace Combat 10 a little bit on my off time, and I've really been enjoying it, but I think my PS2 needs to be PSP needs to be replaced before I can really run games properly. It keeps saying, "Would you like to eject your disc?" or "Would you like to quit your game?" And it says that like every 10 seconds, but the game keeps running in the background, so yeah, not having a lot of luck trying that one out. But we streamed a little bit of Ace Combat 5, and that was super fun. That's the only stream Tony has been present for. And same for my sister, I think. And so that was really fun. And I'm interested in seeing just where more games in the series went, because it looks like anything 4 and older is just a super cheap game to obtain. I'm wondering if there's a reason for that, or not, because I really enjoyed what I've played of the franchise, and I'm interested in seeing what more of them are. This one right here is another game I picked up, similar to Time Commando, because it just had too stupid of an idea for its concept for me to pass up. Now, one thing that none of us knew until just recently was this is apparently a movie tie-in, which we had no idea there was a movie related to this. We just thought it was a stupid idea for a game. But it's basically dragons versus the military, and it was like $1 or $2 maybe. And for a concept that stupid, no matter how good or bad the game turns out, it's something that a few of us have really found interesting, and we just want to try out the game. Because that just sounds like such a dumb idea. Dragons versus military. And like modern day military, not like medieval military. And this just sounds like such a dumb idea, and we want to try it out. I also picked up Onimusha 2, which I picked up Onimusha 1, I think, in Pickups 2, and I kind of explained it then. It's like Nier from last year. It's kind of like the spiritual successor to that. Kind of like slow-paced 3D Ninja Gaiden, I guess is another way you could say it. But it's a samurai game. I've already gone into depth with it. The prequel, and as far as I know, the sequel is going to be more of the same of that. So you can check out Pickups 2 for a bit more description on that. Not that I know much anyway. Then, one game I've actually been considering getting for a long time, I didn't even realize this game was remade, but I probably should have known, is Resident Evil Code Veronica. I really wanted to get this for the Dreamcast, and then I just came across the PS2 remake, which I had no idea was even a thing, and I'm guessing it's probably the definitive version of it, or at least compared to the Dreamcast version, and so I'm very interested in that. Also, $5 versus, I don't know. How much is Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Sega Dreamcast?
Do you want to know the price for Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Sega Dreamcast?
Yes.
The top search result for Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Sega Dreamcast is Biohazard Code Veronica, Limited Edition, Japan import. It's $45.69 on Amazon. If you'd like to hear details, just ask.
Stop. So yeah, a Japanese import of the original version is still going to be 9 times more than what I paid for this. So, I'll happily try out the PS2 version. But, this is, I believe, the last Tank Controls Resident Evil game. Sort of like a follow-up to, it was Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Veronica. Then they moved on to other things. There might have been another one, but I never followed the franchise enough to know that much in detail. Don't really need an explanation for this, just found it super cheap, and when I picked up Pac-Man World 1, this was bundled in. So, Namco Museum, a few Namco games. Those are always fun games to play and visit. For some reason, the sleeve is falling down in the case. There we are. But yeah, just some Namco games for the PS2. I'd be interested in trying those out, because I do have a Namco Museum collection for the Dreamcast, although I'm not a big fan of that controller, and neither the D-pad or analog stick seem like they'd work that well for these kind of games. So I think that the PS2 will handle that much better, and so I'm excited to try those out. Are we done with PlayStation? I mean, I don't know. You could call this a PS1, or yeah. Okay, these are not necessarily PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, but they are both still technically PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. So, at a local game store, I was hanging out, I was there with Chris K, and he found this. We've looked into it, and we think that it is the soundtrack to Pepsi Man, which was a Japanese exclusive PS1 game. It may not be, but it's a licensed Pepsi CD. We got it for free because literally nobody else wanted this, and I mean, Chris just kind of was like, yes, that sounds amazing, and then we just kind of walked out with it. And so, I don't know, it's been added to my display. It's been back here between Johnny's album, or Kirby, and Live at Grilby's from Carlos. And so, yeah, Pepsi or Pepsi Man soundtrack CD. So glad I got to add that to collection. I don't know why I have it. The other one now. This is something I was super excited to find, because our local game store has a section behind the counter, which is games that either need to be buffered still, or there's no guarantee they're in a condition to be sold. A lot of them are perfectly fine to be sold. They're just, like, not sorted onto the shelf yet. And one thing he had sitting back there was Ico. And the thing is, this isn't the game. This is the official soundtrack CD. And I already listened to the soundtrack of this game every now and then as well. Like, You Were There was... it's like one of my favorite soundtracks from any game. And, I mean, I'm guessing that's on here. Is it? Oh, is there a list? There is not. But, I no longer have a disk drive in my PC. I still have my disk drive that was previously in my PC under here. I just don't have it hooked up to my PC because there's no spot for it in the new case. But I'm sure I could find ways to play this, but it's just a really cool thing to have. And now I really want the Shadow of the Colossus CD, which I've been looking into. It's like $40, Japan only. So, not sure how motivated I am for this, but this was 50 cents. And so, very happy to have that in the collection, because I love that soundtrack. Or at least what I've heard of it. Sure. We'll skip a few. I'm not paying attention to console order as much this time, because I don't think anyone really cared anyway. I got Kirby's Pinball. How close do I have to get it for there? Kirby's Pinball Land. Now I originally thought that this had the same thing as Pokemon Pinball for the Game Boy, where it was like gyro controls, but this is one I could just play, and it's just Nintendo made a few pinball games, Game Boy Advance era, and just with their IPs, and I've seen a lot of Pokemon Pinball and Mario Pinball, and I actually really enjoyed Metroid Prime Pinball. And this is just one that's I've always overlooked for some reason, and it was mentioned to me by Anthony at one point, and so I figured I'd look into it, and I just came across a copy, decided to pick it up. It's about the whole story behind that. Another Game Boy Color game I got was Croc. Is this Legend of the Gobos, or is it just Croc? I don't know. Focus, camera. What do I have to do to make this? Is it gonna? There we go. Croc, which I forget what studio it was. I think it was the ones who like worked on the engine for the original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. But yeah, it might not be that studio. I might just be mixing up my lore. But they wanted to make a 3D platformer starring Yoshi around the time that like Mario 64 was in development. Nintendo said, "No, that's our property, you can't touch it." And so they moved to PlayStation and made their character that is similar to Yoshi, and they made Croc Legend of the Gobos, and then Croc 2. And I know those games have really good soundtracks, but I've heard that they're just kind of dull to play, and just kind of very slow and clunky. So I've never been sure how interested I am in that, but I'm very interested in the legacy and the story behind the franchise. And I had no idea that they managed to get a Game Boy Color game, so I found that super cheap, decided to pick it up. I'm interested in trying it out. Good game, bad game, I want to try it out. Got one game for the Game Boy Advance. Don't know a single thing about this, except that it's literally the same title as a game we've previously played on the channel. And that is SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. And we literally just finished the GameCube version, and then I found the Game Boy Advance version. And it's probably a completely different game, but I'd be interested in getting most of that crowd back together to just see just play that game sort of again, but it's going to be something completely different. And like, we all enjoyed SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, so who knows what the Game Boy Advance version has. It's definitely a topic of interest for a few of us. And then the last super old game that I got was, Animaniacs for the Sega Genesis. Now, I know, and not even next to nothing, just absolutely nothing about the franchise Animaniacs, as it's more commonly known as a TV show or something. But similar to things like Aladdin or DuckTales or whatever, it's one of those super well-made 2D platformers that like just really escalated to just be far more than anyone thought it could have been back in its era. And I don't remember where I heard about it from, and I could even be remembering it completely differently than what it was, but I've just heard that this is a really, really good 2D platformer, and I believe it's a Genesis exclusive, so I decided to pick that up because I want to try it out. It sounded interesting. This one I wanted to put in highlights, but I couldn't really bring myself to put it there. And that is, I got Metroid Prime for the GameCube. My absolute favorite game of all time. Like, there's nothing has even come close other than just other Metroid Prime games. And just everything about this game just clicked for me. My favorite game of all time. I can talk about it for literally like 3 times as long as whatever the length of this video ends up being. Picked up the GameCube version because what I did is I originally borrowed all 3 games in the trilogy off of Connor, and then I ended up borrowing them off him a year or 2 later, playing through all of them on hard mode. Then I picked up the Trilogy Edition for Wii, so now I own all 3 of them, which, for Corruption, same thing. Prime 1 and 2, it updated them to widescreen. They run a little bit better, and then you have the, by definition, more refined Wii Remote and Nunchuck controls. I personally just prefer the GameCube experience for the game. I like the controls with that more, because the Trilogy version is not compatible with the GameCube controller. for some reason, even though the Wii is compatible with the GameCube controller. And so I'm really interested in playing it again, but Connor couldn't find his copies of them, and so I just went out and bought it myself. And with how much I love this game, I was happy to get a second copy of it. Onto the 360, we have Lost Planet Extreme Condition, which this is the first Lost Planet game, and when I first got my gaming PC, one of the very first games I played on it was Lost Planet 2, which I played with both of the Chris's, and that was pretty much my introduction to the PC gaming space, and it's quite interesting. I definitely enjoyed some of the concepts, but I just felt kind of like watered down. I just kind of wanted the core experience to be a bit more refined. And from what Chris has told me, because I literally know nothing about this other than my experience with the sequel and what he's told me, is that this tried to be a narrative experience that had like a plot going for it, and then the second one tried to be an online multiplayer and kind of get rid of that. So this definitely sounds more like the kind of game I wanted. I don't know if the second game is much more refined or not, but that description of this game sounds much more appealing to my interests as a gamer. So me and him are interested in going through that because we both have a lot of experience with the sequel, but it sounds like the developer's intention for the plot and the online multiplayer is just completely flipped between those two games. I picked up Devil May Cry 4, which I honestly did not realize was a game, because me and Chris are super excited to go through Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3, and I thought the series was just Devil May Cry 1, 2, 3, and then DMC, and then the new one that they're working on. I thought DMC was just their Devil May Cry 4, but since it was a reboot, they didn't add in the 4. I didn't realize that somewhere in between that there actually was a fourth game, so we found that, and we're going to add that to the trilogy whenever we get through that. This one will be, I don't know. It's not a game that feels particularly special to me, but anyone that knows me in person or has known me for like at least 5 or 10 years knows that this is a game that they never thought I'd be buying, and that is Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Now, I have never owned or really played any game in the Call of Duty franchise because it just hasn't seemed that appealing to me. And for the longest time, that ended up being a really big problem because I'd have friends over, and at that time, playing multiple people with a single-player game just wasn't that interesting to us. It wasn't an idea we even considered. And so we always wanted either Smash Bros. Or like the one Halo game I had. And that was just kind of what we were stuck with every time I hosted anything. Everyone always wanted me to have a Call of Duty because they're like, we want to play Call of Duty. That sounds like a fun game. It's like a realistic military shooter. We want to play Call of Duty. I never ended up buying a Call of Duty. It just wasn't my thing. And at that time, like every installment of the franchise was still fairly expensive or so old I didn't even have the console for it at that time. So I decided I'd finally pick up a Call of Duty game, not necessarily for multiplayer, which, I mean, as a factor, this is now a multiplayer game that is available if I have friends over and we wanted to try it. I know it got remastered. I wasn't concerned enough to go for that version, especially with the price difference and the bundled with another game or whatever. But what stood out to me with this is everyone says that the plots of the single-player modes were just kind of like, they got generic, or they got boring, or they didn't really escalate or whatever. And then I kind of like, everything I've heard about the franchise's story modes, because that's what I'd be interested in trying, is that they just gradually got better from when the series started. Modern Warfare 4, or 4 Modern Warfare blew it out of the water, amazing storyline, amazing campaign, and then it just kind of went down from there again, with Black Ops maybe being decent enough. And so that sounded quite interesting to me, and considering how cheap games in that series are of that era now, I decided to pick it up, and I'm interested in trying out the plot for that, because Apparently it's the best of, or the best plot the franchise has on offer, so I'm interested in trying that out. For Xbox One, I got Final Fantasy 15. Now, I had no idea if I wanted to buy this for the longest time due to a few things. I've been accumulating quite a few Final Fantasy games. Still never played a Final Fantasy game. I own like half the series now. Never actually played one yet. So I didn't want to pick this up because I felt like I didn't know if it was something I'd actually get to without just already having so many games on my to-do list already. And then they had all these DLCs coming out for it, even up to like this year, I think. And then there was different releases of the game. Some that include like season passes or the first DLC or all DLC up to this point. And I was like, well, I just want to wait until they have all of the DLC and just buy that version. And eventually there just became so many versions of Final Fantasy 15 to keep track of, and then there's like this movie that ties into the plot, and it just sounded so overcomplicated that I just wasn't focusing on it much. And then the local game store had the Xbox One Day 1 version for $10. And I figured that's worth picking up. Like, no matter how complicated the DLC is or the movie integration is, if it's a game this new that's just like $10, I'm okay getting the Day 1 edition and then just evolving it with like DLC, or maybe even getting the definitive edition later on, just trying it out. Also, I've been joining Doug Perry's streams quite a bit these past 6 or 8 or whatever months, and he's been streaming a little bit of that until his PS4 broke or stopped reading discs, and that's definitely brought my interest up in the game a lot. I like games that have a lot of just kind of like really creative ways of filling dead time and making exploration really feel worth your while, and from what I've seen of that, it looks like something that, it looks like one of very few open world games that has really caught my interest. So that's it for physical games for a little while. Additionally, there is some games I got for PC, which I can't just show a box for because they're not boxed PC games. So first of all, I have a friend, Lucas Guimaras, or Third Koopa on most medias, and he had his first Patreon game night a week or two ago, and I was able to join for that, and a new game that they wanted to try that they knew really well and I knew nothing about, I'd never even heard of it, was Armello, which is, I don't know it well enough to really explain it well, but it's a very artistically driven sort of board game, but very much just a strategy versus game that is 4v4, or no, 4-player free-for-all, just trying to like get one of several ways of achieving ultimate victory. And I'm very interested in getting further in. I've played part of the tutorial and one game, and so I have no idea what I'm doing with the game, but I have it now, and it definitely captivated my interest. I'm interested in seeing more of what that franchise, or more of what that game has available, because what I played so far was quite fun, even if I haven't learned the mechanics yet, and so I'm very interested in seeing more of what Armello has to offer. Additionally, I got Beat Saber. So, yeah, I kind of had weird thoughts about this game, because I think I mentioned Box VR or whatever in one of these, but I've been playing Music Box on the channel because that was a free rhythm game. I really like that, but they kept updating it to be better, then they'd update it and it'd be worse, and I just wasn't really that interested in the experience with just how inconsistent it was every time I played it. And so I tried looking into Beat Saber, Audio Shield, and Box VR, because those were the 3 leading rhythm games, and just my interest was immediately drawn to Box VR because the mechanics of it just seems so much more fun. Like the punching in all the different directions, it just seems so much more involved, because I was less interested in how refined the experience was or how visually intriguing it was. I was interested in having fun, like, with the movements and motions that you execute while you play the game. And that was my big focus on it. And even after playing several hours of Beat Saber, Box VR is still my favorite. I just find it much more fun to play. But I guess another thing for that is people who play rhythm games, a lot of them really like to push their limits. I just like to have fun, and for me, having fun is not pushing my limit, but having it always within the realm of possibility if you can stick with it. And so that's what I really like about Box VR, is that just kind of fits exactly what I'm trying to get out of a VR rhythm game. But I did pick up Beat Saber because I have several friends who have requested playing it, or being able to play it, and I have had minor interest in it. I've just felt that, like, it's so focused on, like, difficulty that instead of actually getting to swing, you'll have to, like, stick to your wrist motions or whatever, and so much of it is going to be stuck to memorization and getting familiar with patterns because of just how fast some of these things are. And so it just didn't capture my interest in the same way that Box VR had, and Audio Shield just looked really slow because you just had a shield that covered a huge range and you just had to block things, and that just seemed kind of slow and uninteresting to me. So Beat Saber is definitely the fastest of them, and I've become a lot more interested in it since being able to actually, like, make some of my own choices in it, since I had just played random meme songs on Expert on someone else's hardware, and that was my entire experience with the game, and it was just, like, stupidly, impossibly difficult, and, like, all you could do was, like, flick your wrists everywhere until they started hurting a lot, and that was just kind of my overview of the game. I just didn't have high hopes for it because my first experience was just very negative. But after messing around with it a bit, not my favorite rhythm game, but the community behind it has definitely is definitely much more intriguing than Box VR, because Box VR doesn't really have much of a community behind it. And Beat Saber, they're like, sure, whatever song you want, we're just going to throw it in there, make a custom track for it, make sure you can do all this stuff, and it does get you very visually involved, and it's a very enjoyable game, and it's just not as much the kind of gameplay I am looking for. And so, we're on to things that are not necessarily games, because this past week was my birthday, and my family decided to get me a few things. Now, they know, well, actually quite literally nothing about video games. My little brother liked Minecraft for a while. That's about as far as any of them have managed to go with liking video games. And so, they picked up a few things for me, and for them that was just, if it's video games, Levi will probably like it. So I'm sure some of you kind of know what I mean by that, but I got a few things that were really random. All of them I'll be able to show, except one of them is not actually here, and I got an 8-bit Link car air freshener, which I guess smells okay, but it's just 8-bit Link. I have a picture of it somewhere. I probably showed it previously or something like that. No, that was something else. But I have a picture I can show of it, and I don't know. They managed to find that. That was not something I expected my family to give me, but that's something they found, and I have that now. Yay. Additionally, I got a Mario Kart 8 magnet, which it's super cool. It's really well made, but the only thing I have that's really a magnetic surface is, like, my PC case or whatever, and I don't want to put magnets on that. I don't want to put magnets on, like, any technology for risks and potentially ruining things, so I just, like, have it in, if you see this little gap right here, I put some poster putty on the back, and I just keep it there, behind the Mario RPG franchise. So, yeah, that magnet. They also gave me this giant fabric keychain Power Star, which is super cool, and it's really well made, and I like the material and the feel of it, because it's kind of like 3D and it's very textured. I just don't like to have a very cluttered keychain, so this has been hanging right there on like this sidebar, kind of next to Majora. And so that's where you'll be seeing this in some of the videos. They got me... Now this is one I know for a fact I will not be keeping. I already have a few people who I've asked about, and it's just the Destiny logo, but it's a sticker. I mean, when your family is just... When your family that doesn't know what video games are, just goes out and looks for anything video game related to give you. I mean, they're bound to come up with one thing that you just have no idea what to do with, so I'm just giving that to a friend, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with a decal with the Destiny logo. Something they got me that, oddly enough, I've never owned a lanyard before. Like, it's never been a thought that crossed my mind, because I always have my keychain on my belt loop or the strap of my backpack. I never actually wanted, and like the closest I've ever had to a lanyard was like that thing at Con Bravo that had like your name tag on it. So they got me this one, which it's just kind of Mario in general, and as far as I can tell from the artwork, it's primarily from the Mario Party franchise. Try to get it to focus. Focus. Yeah, but it's just kind of stuff like that, and on the very end there's like this rubber Mario head, which is really cool, and it matches another Mario thing I have over there, but that one's actually like nailed in, so I can't take it out, but it's like the same face as that, and that's very cool. I don't really know what I'm going to use a lanyard for, but I've never owned one, and maybe owning one will convince me to start to use it. Although it's just a very colorful one. Like, you have to get close to it to actually have any idea what it is. It's just bright colors everywhere. So, quite interesting. One other thing they gave me that, in hindsight, I should have actually worn for this video is a Twitch t-shirt. Now, I don't really buy t-shirts much anymore because I just have so many to filter through, but I did not own any type of Twitch memorabilia. And on one of the sleeves, it even has the Twitch logo. And so, I'm sure I can wear that in some streams. It's just, I own yet another black t-shirt. I own so many of those now. Then they don't show up too well on camera, but that doesn't stop me from wearing a Twitch t-shirt. That's a fun thing to wear. And there's so much noise coming from the chair right now. Okay. The very last thing that my family gave me was a Sonic plush, which is actually pretty large. It took me forever to figure out where to put it. I ended up like keeping it in this spot where I previously had a Pikachu, and now I moved the Pikachu up on top of the TV here. So now I actually have an Eevee and a Pikachu on top of my TV, which is not planned at all in relation to Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, but those are just the two plushies that I already had from long before that game announced that can actually be placed on top of the TV and look kind of decent, because a lot of them have like legs that would hang over the screen, or they just don't have enough of a flat base to like mount them there. But the Sonic one is actually fairly large. The tag represents modern Sonic, but I think to some extent it has some aspects of classic Sonic in its design. But I found it quite interesting. I have almost nothing other than just actual games to represent the Sonic franchise, and it's very cool to add this in. I don't really get plushies much anymore because I really don't know where to put them, because I have like a little row here and then this section here, but I just don't really have room to add to that, and so I never really bother to. But I don't know, it's cool to get something added to that. Like, they're very cool figures, but I just feel like a lot of times they're quite expensive, like 20 bucks. And then there's a few things I got that were console modifications of sorts. So I picked up a carrying case for the Game Boy Advance. Now this one I actually got for free because he just hadn't been able to sell it. And so I don't keep games in it yet, but I keep the Game Boy Advance in the front. And something that it's probably not a good idea, but I've actually used this for my Game Boy Advance a lot, is I have a really bright LED headlamp that I keep in the main compartment. And the reason for that is because I don't have the SP, so it's not backlit. And I found that just rather than worrying about perfect lighting or having the right environment for it, if you're wearing like one of these LED headlamps and it's just pointed in front of you, then literally however you're holding the Game Boy Advance, you're getting a very well lit screen and you're not getting like a glare from the lights. So I found that quite useful for getting the most out of a non-backlit Game Boy screen. And so I'm just keeping that in the case for now, because that's about the only thing I actually end up using the lamp for, and that works very effectively at keeping them together in a contained thing. Even if you look like an idiot when you have it on, but I mean, I don't know, more often than not, if I'm playing Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games, I'm playing that on the Game Boy player. And then I got a multi-tap for the PlayStation 1, which will now let me do up to 5-player games, which I pretty much just bought this for Crash Team Racing. There's many other games I could be utilizing this for, but I think that's the only one I own that would really utilize this, and it's the only one I'd really care to utilize it. So, yeah, I'm interested in using that for just PS1 stuff if we want to try to do 4-player, because this was a necessary thing, since unlike the N64, it was not built in to have 4 players, and so an adapter was needed. Also, I can hook up 6 memory cards at once now if I choose to. Why would I want to do that? Additionally, as you might have noticed, there's been a lot of GameCube usage on the channel lately, and something I did a long time ago is I tried to get some extension cables for all of my classic controllers, so that I wouldn't have to stretch the console out. I could just sit on the couch and have no worries about the wires, so every controller had at least like 10 feet to 15 feet wires, rather than their default like 6 foot or whatever. So I got a few more for the GameCube, because I've previously had 2 of them. One of them broke, the other one still works fine, but they've been getting a ton of use, and now I only have 1, so I figured it'd be good to have a few more so that I don't have to worry about friends pulling too hard on cables, or tripping on cables, and also just as a fail-safe in case one of my existing ones doesn't work. So those are pretty cheap, and I already have another pair of N64 ones in the mail, which I have one for the N64, but who knows, maybe we'll get use out of having more. So those are still being expected in the mail, but there are also 2 N64 ones on the way. And then for the Switch, I got 2 things, one of which I'm not that happy with, but I got it anyway. So, that grip I showed last time on the Switch, I got the Skull & Co. grip, which is probably like the highest reviewed one. It has, there's 2 parts to this, but it has swappable grips, so depending on your hand size, you can adjust it to fit larger or smaller grips, and I just find this super comfortable. It's the comfort of the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode is just, it's so much better with this. I love it so much. And also, you could still put it in and out of the dock without taking this case off, which I love. That's really nice for me. It doesn't make it that nice on keeping it in a carrying case, but I don't know. I still can just put it in the carrying case as long as I don't try to zip the carrying case. And more often than not, everything stays where it's supposed to anyway, so not really that big a deal to me. The other thing I got is I got some D-brand skins, because I thought white Joy-Cons just look super cool. As great as they look, I am not happy with these at all. Like, they peel so easily. They fit so poorly. The way that you apply them is so much more difficult than every other D-brand product I've tried. And then the fact that I'm trying to use this grip case, pretty much the act of putting it on or taking it off just peels the D-brand skins off entirely. So I have to leave the case on all the time if I want the D-brand skin to last. And even though you're seeing it through like low res, so it probably just looks perfectly applied, like there's just gaps all over it. There's a lot of flaws in it that are apparent on the sides, which because it's in this case I can't really show, but I'm just not really happy with these. You'd get more mileage out of them more likely if you were just putting them on like the gray Joy-Cons or something and there wasn't like a clash in colors, but these are on top of my purple ones, so I'm thinking about just taking them off, leaving it as purple, because that just worked a lot better. I mean, if you're not using any kind of grip case whatsoever, and I don't know, maybe you're just sticking to a Pro controller for everything instead of handheld mode, maybe you'd want to try out the dbrand skins, but just, I don't know, with my experience with them, they've just kind of been everything but negative, except for like still images of the front side, and to me that's just not worth it. So they look cool. In practice, I'm not that happy with them. So yeah, that was a lot of stuff. And we're not even in the highlights yet. We're just at... But we are done with everything other than the highlights. So let's get into my very top picks out of things I've picked up. So, round one of highlights is I picked up Windlands 2. This is another VR game, but Windlands 1, I streamed like the very end of the game, but that has by far been my favorite game in VR. And I've played a lot of games in VR now, and that has by far been my favorite. Just the look, the feel, the sound design, the platforming, the grappling stuff. If you can't handle motion sickness, the game is not for you at all. But that literally means nothing to me. I can play games with motion sickness for a very long time, and it just doesn't affect me. So, I loved that game. Windlands 1 was one of my favorite games. Or, it was and is my favorite game in VR. And Windlands 2 came out like a week ago. I had no idea it was even in development, but it just showed up in the Oculus app as a top recommended, and I just picked it up on the spot. I don't know what is different about it. I know there's some multiplayer aspects to it now, and there might be archery, I think, but I don't care. I love that first game so much that, and everyone says the second game is better than the first game, and that just sounds great to me. There was no way I wasn't picking it up, and so super excited to try out Windlands 2 at some point. I wasn't sure if this one deserved to be in highlights because everyone knows about it already, but F-Zero GX, I literally picked up this game because they got it in stock. They were selling it for pretty cheap. Mint condition, manual, disc is untouched, case is perfect condition, and I've been wanting this game for a long time. It just sounded really fun, but it was always fairly expensive, and the local game store got it in, put it on hold, picked it up. Literally 2 hours later we were streaming it, and we completed that game last month because we just could not put the game down. It was just so much fun. Very difficult, but incredibly fun. It's such a good game. It's so well made. It puts things like the Wipeout series and Fast RMX completely to shame, and it's 15 years older than them. Or something like that. I don't know how old this is. This one I spoiled a little bit earlier, but yeah, I got Crash Team Racing. I've been looking for this game for quite some time. It just hasn't been showing up anywhere that I've been checking, except for like eBay, and on eBay it was quite a bit more than I was really certain if I wanted to just drop on it. One of the local game stores got in a copy, and it was $12, and from what I can tell, it's somewhat similar to the F-Zero series in that it is a very acceleration and really quick reflexes racer, and it's just looked very interesting to me. It's kind of like the PlayStation counterpart to like Diddy Kong Racing, just like the racing game that just went one step further than it really needed to, but it just did it anyway. And Crash Team Racing has just looked super fun, and I'm really interested in getting into that. And you probably know me at this point. More PS1. I got Vagrant Story, which this game I have pretty much almost solely heard about through PlayStation Access. the main guy on there, what's his name, like Rob or something like that, I think. I don't know, they don't say their names that often, they just say PlayStation Access. But he's been recommending this game for the longest time. They actually had a copy of this at Con Bravo. I almost considered getting. They were like, well, because this is a 2-disc case. And they just said, well, we only have the first disc for the game. We can offer that to you for like 3/4 of the price or something. Like, they were like, well, we can offer that to you for like 30 or 40 bucks. And I was like, I almost wanted it, and then I looked it up online. I couldn't figure out how to get the second disc, and so I just decided not to pick that one up because I don't want to get halfway into a JRPG and just find out, oh, you just have to buy the entire game again, disc 1 and 2, in order to complete it, and then you just have another copy that's sitting around that's just disc 1, and it just seemed like too much of a hassle to bother with. The local game store got it in. It was only a little bit more expensive than what I would have paid for that disc 1 only. Except I found out disc 2 for this game is just a demo disc. And the whole game is actually only on one disc. So I'm quite concerned that I could have gotten this game cheaper for just getting the game and not the demo disc. But I thought it was the first half of the game and the second half of the game. But it's a very unique take on a JRPG. Definitely one of the best graphically looking games on PS1 that I've seen. Not for like FMVs or like sprite work or something, but like just 3D figures and stuff. It's got a very stylized art style that I'm quite intrigued by. And although I don't know too much about the combat system, it looks very distinct for the era, or just JRPGs in general. And I'm very interested in seeing what that has to offer. It's got a very odd and not frequently used tone with like kind of medieval stuff that you don't see as often for JRPGs. They always kind of go for fantasy, not necessarily just medieval. As I mentioned earlier, I got a PS1 bundle, which included a PS1. So, you got like the cables and stuff, and a memory card, and a controller, which I put a label on because everything on it works. X button does not work. I have plenty of these controllers anyway. They're super cheap. Maybe I'll disassemble it, try to figure it out, but I'm not holding my breath. It's not that big a deal if the controller didn't work. But PlayStation works just fine, and I'm sure when I was saying, look at all these games I got in this PlayStation bundle, and it's like, why would you even get that? None of those really stand out. It's because it was $25 and it included the console. I didn't really care what games came bundled with it. I just wanted the console. Thing is, I already own a PS1 and a PS2. So why did I get a second PS1? The reason is, this is one of the most fragile consoles I know of. Like, I'm sure there's much worse, but like this console is just very fragile. And almost all the ones I come across in person or in the wild are broken. And there's just any number of reasons for it. They're just very fragile. And with just how many games I've been getting for the PS1, how many games I want to play on the PS1, and how much I have been using the PS1, I just don't know how much longer my PS1 can handle just that much use. I'm trusting that it will, no problem, but considering how good of an offer that was for this PS1, I figured I'd pick up as a backup system just in case I overwork my existing PS1, since that is completely possible given the statistics behind how robust a PlayStation 1 unit is. And I know I could just play PS1 games on my PS2, but I don't know, I just like playing it on original hardware. I like doing that for everything. That's why I don't mess with emulators. There's a few things I didn't know if I should include them or not, because I don't really know how much they're defined as video game pickups, but if you notice on streams over the course of the last month, and if you watch the first F-Zero GX stream, you'll actually know about this already, but when I have people join for streams, typically we're all wearing a pair of headphones. There's my old silver pair, which friends borrowing, can't show those now, and then my Sennheisers, which my C598 CSs, or my 598 CSs, which these are really, really nice headphones. And they're still my best headphones, but if you've seen on streams recently, there's been another pair of Sennheiser headphones that, like, usually Chris is wearing those Sennheiser ones that I showed, but there's also another pair that have shown up. And I got these because I wanted a better pair for my Bluetooth headphones that just have, like, all the features and buttons and whatnot, with, like, skipping tracks, pausing tracks, and stuff. But as it relates to the channel, it's just another gaming headset I can use, and they're very nice quality, they're very comfortable, and it just means that when we have people playing RPGs or playing games for the stream or for stuff on the channel, it just means that more and more people can join and more people can get nicer headphones without having to bring something of their own, which in more cases than not, even like my 4th or 5th best pair of headphones is still better than what almost any of them have, except for 2 of them who just have USB headphones. So I don't know, it's just really nice when I'm trying to organize these things to just have some really nice pairs of headphones available, and I'm really happy to add these to my collection. I've been using them all the time, and they've been helping out a lot on the stream by having 2 really nice pairs of headphones that both people playing can have and just really enjoy the experience with all of the emphasized qualities of having headphones of that caliber. These ones I figured I'd just kind of do as a trilogy, but or do together, but Xenoblade Chronicles 1, by far my favorite RPG of all time. I think, maybe. I might like a few of the Mario RPGs more, but for traditional RPG, well, it's not even really a JRPG, but like traditional action RPG, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is my favorite. So, for those of you who don't know, Xenoblade Chronicles is part of actually 3 separate franchises known as the Xeno franchise, which includes Xenogears, Xenosaga, which has Xenosaga Episode 1, Xenosaga Episode 2, Xenosaga Episode 3, and then Xenoblade has Xenoblade Chronicles X, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So it's a 7 games across 1 overall franchise and 3 sub-franchises, although one of those sub-franchises is a standalone experience. One of those is 3 games that continue a plot, similar to something like Mass Effect or whatever. And then there's the Xenoblade games, which are a series of games that are still independent of each other. And I guess technically there is a 4th Xenoblade now, if you want to count, like Tora, the Golden Country or something like that. I haven't looked into it enough to really know the name of it. But I decided to pick up a game in each of the franchises. So, with all of the money I got for my birthday, I picked up Xenogears, which I've been wanting this for a very long time. I've been super interested in this. One of my favorite covers in the entire VGM community is Samo Studios or Sam Dillard's cover of like Chrono Cross, or like it's like Chrono Gears or Xenocross, something like that. It's just like a 40-minute like super crazy orchestral medley, and it just like brings me to tears every time I watch it, and it's just so good. And then like the Pixel Mixers were showing so much support for this game, and when I was originally doing the poll for what JRPG would be on the channel, it came down to Chrono Cross, Legend of Dragoon, and Xenogears. I only had Chrono Cross at the time, and so I ended up picking up Legend of Dragoon, and then Xenogears I still wanted to get eventually, and I finally managed to get a copy, because the one of our local game stores here had not changed the price on this. Like, the game had not been selling for them, and so they just had the same price sticker on it from when the game was at a lower value. So it was only $45, which is incredibly cheap for this game. This game is more like a $90 game or something at this point. but they just hadn't updated their stickers since it was worth $45, and I'm super happy to add that to the collection. Xenosaga, I know almost nothing, except that it just kind of looks odd. No, not a lot of people talk about these games. Xenosaga Episode 1 and 2 are not the most expensive games to pick up. They're among the cheapest of the Xeno games. Although Xenosaga 3 is, I think, almost as expensive, if not more expensive, than Xenogears. Like, Xenosaga Episode 3, no idea why it's so expensive. Maybe the PS3 was close to launching or something, but I'm very interested in at least trying this out and then seeing if I want to invest in the next games. But with how much I like the next game after the Xenosaga series, and how much I've heard about the game before this, I'd be interested in seeing what happens somewhere in the middle with that studio. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I liked Xenoblade Chronicles 1 a lot. Xenoblade Chronicles 1, or X and 2 both seemed rather off-putting to me, for various reasons. Xenoblade Chronicles X, the plot didn't look that interesting, and it looked like it was just more of the same, but without anything inspiring happening. And the plot was what really captivated me with the first game. And it just looked like a lot of the open world stuff was just open world for the sake of open world. And then they were promoting all this mech stuff. And then I heard that even if you play the game, you don't get mech stuff until the end of the game. And so I really was unsure how to feel about that. And then I heard like the soundtrack, and I was just so disappointed with that, because that was like my favorite aspect of the first one. So Xenoblade Chronicles X, it just never caught my interest. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the plot sounded interesting, but it was just like, how much anime and sex appeal can we fit into our Xenoblade game? And then I heard that they simplified the combat, and that was something I really liked about Xenoblade Chronicles, which I heard X actually did improve on, but I heard that they made it like an auto attack system or whatever, and I'm very interested in it also because it's a handheld game, so I can bring it anywhere while I play it. So I just was super uncertain about getting Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and then I was talking to Alpharad and Ant Dude at one of the panels, like in between talks, about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and they both had a lot of good stuff to say about it, because they have both played Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, and I got to kind of bring up some of my doubts about 2, and they really clarified a lot about it, and definitely revitalized my interest in trying out 2, so I decided to pick up Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I'm going to give it a try, because a lot of things about it interest me. There's just several things that had me doubtful, similar to X, but more so in a, that's not the type of thing I gravitate towards, then that's a disappointing design choice, if that makes sense. And it's finally here. The very last thing in this video. Not the most exciting thing in this video, but it's just something I've been looking for a while, and that is a CRT TV. The reason that this is very exciting to me is because I got this CRT, and it's huge, and it's incredibly nice quality. It does everything I need it to super well, and it's... I have a lot of experience with CRTs, not necessarily owning them, but like seeing them in use, and this is one of my favorite CRTs I've ever used, because it just has really nice picture clarity. It has some really nice settings with the color. It has none of the input lag. It's really large. It has a headphone port on the front, and it's got a few different places you can hook up different things to it. And it doesn't have that much of a power draw compared to a lot of similar looking ones. And so I'm incredibly happy with that. And it's just that sometimes there's times where you want to have something like that, because there's times where you just need CRT. You can't just have other things. And my setup is optimized in a way where I can take out consoles if I need them for something, but some of those are just going to really require CRT. And I'm part of a Smash Brothers club at the university, and they will frequently want to play things, or well, pretty much everything they want to play it on a CRT. And the only CRT I have on offer cannot be moved. We have a bunch of space outside my room, but there's just not a CRT out there. And so I was really looking for a second CRT, but there was just so much specific criteria I wanted in it that just over like my last 2 years of like searching and actually looking into every CRT I actually came across on like Craigslist, Facebook Messenger, seeing them on the curb or whatever, or talking to people or talking to friends who had seen them. Like every single CRT I had seen just didn't quite meet my criteria, because I wanted, or my number one criteria was I wanted it to be small. I didn't want it to be so small that it was pretty much useless, but I wanted it to be roughly 1 foot diagonal, which this one is literally the perfect size for my needs. The reason for that is it's about as small as it can be, where you can still get a very clean image, because with CRTs, the larger ones actually do give a cleaner image, because unlike traditional monitors that we see nowadays, where it's something like 1080p, it's like, well, the pixels are smaller, but it's still like 1920 by 1080, as long as it says it's a 1080p screen. These, they were just concerned with aspect ratio, not resolution. So larger TVs actually did have more opportunities for higher resolutions, and for me this was kind of the sweet spot, because at this scale you could still get ones that have a very crisp image. Well, more often than not, a lot of ones at this scale actually do still suffer from a lower quality image due to them not having enough space or detail in them to get the resolution that you want. And so a lot of times that I've come across one that was the size I want, it just didn't have the resolution that I needed it to have, and there was just a few other details I wanted about it. I wanted easy access ports, and this one has super easy access ports. I don't have to worry about the backside at all, and since the main time I'd be using it is bringing it around places, it just has it on the front. There's no right audio channel. That is a bit disappointing, but not really a rule, or it's not really a like deal breaker for me, because more often than not it's kind of going to be a portable thing. The other reason that I actually wanted this size was because it's as small as it can be, where it's still really quality, and this one has a great quality image. I was very, very impressed with the image on this. Like, I've seen CRTs that are double or triple or quadruple this size that do not have as clear of an image as this, and it's not just due to the size of the image and it, like, blurring at larger spaces or resolutions or larger sizes, but like the actual clarity of the image is very, very distinct on this, and I'm very happy with that. But the reason I also wanted that scale is because, for the most part, this TV will be in storage. There's going to be times where I really, really will need this, but for the most part, it will be stuck in storage, and I just can't have something that big that I have to store, because, well, I'm living at my parents' house, or whenever I move out to an apartment, you can't just store something that big. So, this one works perfect for me, because I can actually store it underneath my setup, or I can fit it under my bed, and it's just the perfect size for storing, the perfect size for bringing it around places, and then it's got all the features I need it to have. It's got a headphone jack, so you can even just have whatever audio you're listening to on there. It's got all of the menu settings, which most CRTs, although they have a menu button, they do not really allow you to change it to game or video mode, which you will need to get a universal remote or have the original remote for. This did not come with a remote, but the menu button in here actually lets you put it into game mode, which I don't think I've ever seen on any other CRT, and that is incredibly convenient. Like, if you know anything about like bringing around CRTs or dealing with CRTs for like any type of AV hookup, that is like a huge deal. Having one that you can activate game mode or TV mode or video mode with just the buttons on the front of the TV and no remote needed. So few offer you that convenience, and it makes a huge difference in what you actually need to have with you in order to get it running. Another thing that completely surprised me is speakers on CRTs. are a huge hit or miss. And like so often they're just not what I'm looking for. They're just kind of grainy. They sound really old. The speakers on this one are super good. Like, I think the speakers on this CRT are actually better than the speakers on that one, which the speakers on that one are pretty good. Not the best I've heard on a CRT, but they are really good speakers. And this one, I think actually outdoes it. Not necessarily in volume, but like just the quality of the audio. It's really nice. Even if it might be only available in mono. But it's really nice. I'm really happy with this CRT. It just kind of meets all my needs. It even has like that little antenna loop in the back, which is perfect for just wiring up the cable and keeping it out of the way while you move it around. And it's just got like super easy handles that are not super small. And you don't even need two hands to lift it up. Like, sure, it's still heavy. It's like 20, 30 pounds, but it's just like, I had so many just specific criteria that just over like 2 years of searching, like I've turned down like 100 CRTs because I just couldn't find the one, and I just wasn't sure if there was one that had all of the very specific things I wanted in a CRT, and I finally found it. It does not have, you're not able to use the right audio channel with that. There is adapters. I even own an adapter that will just let you plug them in to headphones. And so if you're using headphones, you can still get left and right audio channel, but just the TV itself won't offer you that. More often than not, it's going to be used for something like Project M or Super Smash Bros. Melee. That's going to be its most common use, and so audio's not going to matter that much in those, but, or at least directional audio. But I'm so excited. I'm so happy to finally get that. That's like probably the least interesting thing here for viewers, but for me and everything I try to get out, that's one of the highlights for me. I'm just so happy that I found so many very specific things that one device was finally able to give to me. Because there's so many manufacturers of CRTs, and this rant has gone on so long. Is it still a rant? I don't know. It's been going on a long time. This recording is almost an hour and a half. So, yeah. Thanks to the people on Discord for voting that this stays as one whole video rather than multiple parts. I enjoyed making it that way. I don't know if you guys are going to enjoy watching it that way. Is anyone still watching at this point? Are you? Either way, no idea when part 5 is coming out, because I am no longer working full-time. I am in class and working part-time. So I actually have to money manage now, rather than just spending all my money on every possible video game thing I see. And so, yeah. That was super, super fun. I'm very happy, very happy with this, and a little disappointed in myself because most of the pickup videos were like 3 or 4 months apart, and they'd feature 30 games. This was like a month and a half after the last one, so it's like half the time and double the games. So I've literally gotten like an average of like 1.5 games a day since the last video. Oh my. Yeah, and I lied at the beginning. I forgot about the N64 cables, so yeah, 65 pickups this time around. But yeah, that was crazy. That was fun. I'm super excited to try a few of these out, and I know I have some friends who are excited to try a few of these out as well. And now I have to figure out where they all go on the shelf again. But that's fine. So, we look forward to whatever you guys have to say in the comments. If you have anything you want to say about these games, because I know nothing about most of them, or almost nothing about most of them. So, if you want to put something in the comments section, just describe to me a bit about, like, what I'm getting into. Like, why this game excites you, or what to look forward to in this, or if you have any ideas for if this is something that's happening. If you're a friend I have in real life, since that's still half of my audience anyway, is there any you want to join for? I don't know. Let me know. There's all kinds of things to look forward to. Special thanks to Joby You commented on the last video giving me some recommendations for adjusting the settings of my camera, because I did not previously know everything there was to know about how to adjust it for fixing some of the grain and blur and saturation issues. And you gave me quite a few tips regarding how to make this video look quite a bit cleaner. And like if you saw in the last one, I had a super bright light hitting the back of my head, and there was just grain all over the bottom area. And I've pretty much gotten rid of that without changing that many settings at all. And I would not have had any idea how to do that without your help, Joby. Thank you very much for those tips on making sure that this video looked as good as it could. It was a very fun video to make. I've been talking for a very, very long time. It's really hard to keep a personality and an attitude and just excitement going at 3:08 a.m. and an hour and a half into a recording. But I think I did okay. So, let me know your thoughts on some of these down in the description below. I mean, you could try to do that, but also let me know in the comments, if not exclusively in the comments. See you next time. Bye.